morning, good morning, good morning. Have to double check that mute on Instagram. We are good. Live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram, all with check marks. I think we are good to go. Yeah, let's get at it. Welcome, everybody. Episode 273, September 5th, 2024. Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. I hope everybody's doing well, settling back into the fall work season. I was trying to place I placed an options trade as I was logging on here, and I was half paying attention, so I hope I didn't screw that up. I'm very interested in this U.S. steel story. We'll get to that shortly, but you will have to remember that I do not provide financial advice. I may tell you what I'm up to in my life, but I'm not providing you any financial advice. Republican Liz Cheney says she will vote for Democrat Kamala Harris for U.S. president. Liz Cheney, after saying on X in 2020 that Kamala Harris is a radical liberal who would raise taxes, take away guns and health insurance, and explode the size and power of the federal government. Now in 24, that's apparently what she is endorsing, proving yet again that Dick Cheney, surprisingly, was only the second most evil Cheney in politics. Who knew? Who knew? We all thought he was the most evil back then. I'm still in this dingy hotel room, and I still have a lighting problem. It looks terrible on my screen, but I checked out the video yesterday. It looked okay for traveling, so we are sticking with this setup for today. All right, where am I? She's endorsing. Okay, so I said yesterday I could smell the Canadian federal election coming. It's in the air, and I base that on the volume of Maxime Bernier's, the People's Party of Canada, libertarian sort of right-wing party, on the volume of his tweets, his X posts, which have really wrapped up in the last week. Now, why would that be happening? Obviously, they're getting interested and they think it's an election. For my U.S. audience, we do not have a defined election date necessarily. In Canada, the Prime Minister gets to call a date or the opposition party gets to force a date. There is a maximum timeline, so there really is a date, but it can happen anytime before that date without getting too complicated about it. Well, yesterday, after I made my prediction that something is afoot, NDP leader, new Democrat Party leader Jamit Singh announced he's pulling his party out of its supply and confidence agreement with the Liberal government. That's Justin Trudeau. You've all heard of him. Withdrawing automatic support on confidence votes and creating uncertainty for the Liberals less than 2 weeks before Parliament resumes after their summer break. This is in the Globe Mail, by the way, but I saw Jamit putting this out on X as well. So just a little more context for our U.S. friend, Justin Trudeau. You all know who that is, the leader of the Liberal Party, which is like the Democrat Party in the U.S. It's sort of that left wing, but not like, well, I shouldn't say not crazy left wing. I think under the Democrat Party has become extreme left wing, and the Liberal Party in Canada has also become extreme left wing, whereas in the old days they were pretty middle of the road, I thought. Anyways, he's been prime minister now for 9 years, which sounds like a crazy long period of time, but in Canada that only makes him the 8th longest premier in history, so it's not really all that interesting. There's basically 3 mainstream parties in Canada if you want to consider the New Democrats a mainstream party. There's 4 parties if you count the separatists. I'm sure Maxime Bernier would argue there's 5 parties. But the point is, if you win the election, getting the most seats in Parliament, you may not have a majority. You may not have all the seats, which means the people that didn't win the election can gang up on you and vote you down as the ruling party. And so the parliamentary system forces you to go and cut a deal if you don't get a majority with somebody else so that you are over a majority. And that's what the Liberals did. And of course, they're not going to do it with the Conservatives, right? The Democrats are not going to work with the Republicans, if you think of it that way. And so they're not going to do that, and they're not going to work with the separatists because that's a bad sign. And so the only real ones left to deal with are the socialist parties, the New Democrat Party. And so that's what they did, and they entered into this cooperation agreement, and that's how the country has been governed since the minority government of Justin Trudeau. So Trudeau exists because of the support of Singh. Let's just put it that way. So yesterday, Singh announced he's tearing up that agreement. The announcement does not mean a federal election is imminent. It's getting there, though. It does raise questions as to whether Prime Minister Trudeau's government can survive until the next scheduled fall election in 2025. It could fall at any time with a vote of confidence. So he puts forward a budget or something that in Parliament would trigger a confidence vote. You either support the budget or the government falls. Those are sort of your two options in that scenario. And so we'll see. We'll see. But I do think an election is coming quickly in Canada. I'll tell you, when we get an election, it's like, I notice it's like 2 months. We don't have years of building up to this like we do in the United States. So why do we care? Well, I think what I was thinking is, there's so much political interference in the economy in both countries these days that I think as business people, we need to really beware of what's going on in politics and how it's going to affect our life. U.S. Steel is an example of that, and we'll talk about that shortly. I was thinking yesterday as I was wandering around to dinner, what would I do if I was Canadian Prime Minister? What am I looking for? Because it looks pretty certain that the Conservative Party is going to win the next election, unless I do have a strategy for the Liberals for that. I think I know what they're going to do. You get another Scott prediction, which is kind of cool. So here's the thing about Canada is I would, if I were in charge, I would look at a completely comprehensive, renewed strategy with respect to energy, which if we've learned nothing in the last 3.5 years of the Biden-Harris regime is the source of everything, right? But, we always knew that wealth comes from energy in this world, in every country. And when you clamp down on energy, you get inflation, you get job loss, you get the hollowing out of the middle class, you get all sorts of societal issues. Well, if I were in charge, I'd be focusing on an energy policy. Some things you may not know. Canada has the third most proven oil reserves in the world, the third largest amount of proven oil reserves in the world. We have a lot of natural gas too. I think we're 18th in the world, but it's a lot. It's a lot of natural gas, mostly where I'm sitting out in Alberta right now. We're already second in the world in hydroelectricity. Electricity from water. It's clean, it's renewable. There's no environmental damage that I'm aware of. Canada has 20% of all fresh water in the world, 20% of all fresh water in the entire world. The greatest potential for hydroelectricity in the world. We could be investing in that. Natural, clean, renewable. We are the country with the most unused or uninhabited land in the entire world. 89%, almost 90% of Canada's land is crown land, meaning it's not owned by it's owned by the government. It's not privately owned. Nobody's living there. So we have this vast amount of land, 90% of the entire country, because, the rest of the population all lives it basically lives in 4 or 5 cities, And so anyways, we have all this land, much of it wilderness, sparsely populated, particularly in the north. So if you want to build solar farms, if you want to build Generation 4 nuclear plants, we got all this place to do it that's safe. It's you can be close enough for transportation, you can build storage, and you could really focus on clean and renewable energy. That's what I would be doing. Yet Canadians pay we have all these resources, yet we pay a massive premium at the pump. We pay a massive premium in our homes and manufacturing plants for energy. So I would be fixing that problem and the hollowing out of the West, like anything east of Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and then east of Ontario, Quebec a little bit. But, we have so many provinces that are struggling so badly because the wealth, just like in the US, is concentrated in the larger urban centers. We can fix that with an energy policy. And when the Harris government takes over in the US, what they're going to do is further constrain energy. Excuse me, allergies. Sorry about that. They're going to further constrain energy, which means prices are going to continue to explode, and that's going to continue to create inflation, take away jobs, going to foreign jurisdictions where energy and prices are cheaper. Well, we can, and that's our major customer in Canada. So we can fix that or start to try to fix that by having a all hands on deck, generate lots of energy policy. And we have enough power in the energy business, I think, to make a dent in the supply and demand. And if Trump wins, which I don't think was going to happen, but if he does win, all the better. We could enter into a comprehensive energy arrangement with the US. Trump wants to flood the world with energy and all the US reserves, particularly in natural gas. Well, cool. Let's work together with them to do that. It's only going to bring manufacturing and high paying jobs and a better level of wealth to our geographically large but population small country. There is the off the top of my head a platform for how to improve Canada. I don't know the conservative policy. I want to take a better look at that. I do know he wants to axe the tax, which is the carbon tax. That makes energy prices higher and hurts manufacturing for sure in Canada. Prediction? You want a prediction from me? The NDP threw up their they tore up their agreement with the Liberal Party in Canada. My prediction is we're going to have a Canadian hot swap, just like we did in the United States, a Canadian hot swap, which means Trudeau's going to step down and they're going to put somebody else in, just like they did in the US. Why? Because we're in Canada and we always do what happened in the US. So we just kind of copy along. Oh, that was a good idea. We should probably do that here. And secondly, because just like Biden, Trudeau is unelectable right now, and the Liberals don't like to lose. There's a reason they call them the natural governing party of Canada. They don't like to lose. He can't win. Therefore, there's going to be a hot swap. Stamp it. They'll swap him out of the leadership race. They're gonna put in further prediction Christina Friedland, who is currently Deputy Prime Minister, female darling of the left, just like Canada. Kamala, not Canada, just like Kamala. Also, she's a lover of all things Ukrainian war, just like Kamala. And she's the least effective politician I've ever met, just like Kamala. By the way, that's a very unpopular opinion in Canada. Us Canadians love our Christina Friedland. I recognize that. I'm going to take heat for having the other side. I've already taken heat for being against her in friend groups and peer groups. I understand that. I know you guys love her. But for me, when she was negotiating the trade deal, she was the head of negotiating the trade deal between Canada and US and Mexico, whatever they ended up calling that thing when Trump was when they had the Trump administration last time. And so she's going to Washington. She's literally traveling to Washington to negotiate with Trump and his team. And she needs to persuade. She needs to set the table. Do you set the table for your negotiations? Make sure you've sort of given yourself the most advantage possible before you get there through whatever, but just set the table for a successful negotiation. Well, what she does is she has press conferences publicly slamming Trump for some personal trait that she disagrees with, or maybe it was on a hoax. I don't remember what she was doing it for, but she's literally traveling there, hosts a press conference so she can get some attention for herself, slams Trump, and then heads into a negotiation with him. Now, you don't need to follow politics. You don't need to be a negotiation expert. Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, you've seen this guy on TV. you know his personality, or you think you have some view of his personality. Do you think slamming him publicly before you show up for a negotiation is the way to go on this? So she does this, and then when she's done with the deal and they've signed off on this Canada, US, Mexican deal, whatever it's called, she wanders around Canada bragging about how successful the negotiations were for Canada. And then when it was pointed out that Canada lost a lot in those negotiations, she says, yeah, I know we lost, but we didn't lose as much as I thought we were going to lose. Okay. Definition of winning. There will be a hot swap. And by the way, if they do a hot swap, she might win. The Liberals might win on this. That's what I think. Just like in the U.S. with Kamala Harris. Separately in the Globe and Mail, as I remind you, U.S. viewers, international viewers, that is the Wall Street Journal of the North is a good way to think about that. There's an opinion piece from a liberal strategist. Says something is rotten in the state of the Liberal Party. The polls show that the Liberals are tumbling towards defeat when the next election is called. Justin Trudeau is so unpopular with all Canadians of every stripes and background. They're going to deliver a landslide to the Conservative Party. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the fate of the Liberal Party itself is now at stake. He thinks it's so bad, it's just going to wipe out the entire party. That's not going to happen, but it is bad. Let's be honest, almost after almost a decade in power, Trudeau and the current Liberal leadership have run out of ideas. The dynamism and energy is all with the Conservatives. The anger today is singularly directed at Mr. Trudeau. That's not surprising. The Trudeau Liberals built their entire brand around the Prime Minister's personal appeal. Maybe. I think that's a good point. When Canadians soured on his integrity and effectiveness, they all soured on the Liberals. And I would suggest to you that everybody soured on his integrity and effectiveness from the trucker protest that happened when he went, he went full totalitarian and clamped down on them, strong-armed them. The kids on the bouncy castles were wiped out, and rigs possessed, and bank accounts seized. It was a horrible aggression on his part, and I don't think that Canadians have ever forgiven him for that. That's my view on that. So should Trudeau decide to lead the Liberals into the next election, he'll take the party down in a generational defeat. And I say that as a Liberal former advisor in this current government. This guy writes, the moment of decision has arrived. Either we rush headlong into electoral disaster or we make a wise choice now. The progress of the past few decades will be wiped out. It's time for Mr. Trudeau to do the right thing for the party and for the country. Call a leadership race. What does that mean, call a leadership race? It means hot swap. So I think there's going to be a hot swap. That's my prediction. And here is an opinion popped up yesterday in the Globe and Mail from a Liberal strategist saying there has to be a hot swap. There has to be leadership. So it's a politics day on the Mornings with Scott. We don't normally, we always have to cover politics because it so impacts business, but we don't try to make it exclusive politics day. But the stories today seem to be political in general. And just as an aside, there was a note, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, that the Government Accountability Office, that's in the U.S., estimates the federal government loses between 233, do you think I'm going to say million? I'm not. 233 billion to 520 billion annually, every single year, to fraud based on data from 2018 to 2022. So an independent government auditor type office has estimated that the U.S. is losing up to $500 billion every single year to fraud in all of these money programs. That's where your taxes are going. This is why we need taxes on unrealized capital gains. As this note points out, that's 2% of America's GDP stolen every year, and $1 trillion loss for the 5-year period. Amazing. Wall Street Journal reports U.S. Steel's chief executive said the company would close steel mills. This is U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh and other locations, but I think out of Pittsburgh mostly, will close steel mills if its planned sale to Nippon Steel, the Japanese, collapse, as the Biden administration has announced that they are going to more than likely block that deal. It hasn't been blocked yet. They're saying Biden's trying to tackle that this week. CEO David Burritt said the nearly $3 billion the $3 billion, so it's a $14 billion deal to buy the company, U.S. Steel, and then Nippon has agreed to invest $3 billion into new technologies and sprucing up the place and making it more effective. So the $3 billion that Nippon has pledged to invest in the Pittsburgh company's older mills is critical to keeping them competitive and maintaining workers' jobs. He says, we wouldn't do that if the deal falls through. I don't have the money. You got to love a CEO who's honest like that. He doesn't have the cash. He can't get the cash because no one believes in the company. And also, the domestic steel business just regularly gets crushed from cheap Chinese imports. Dumping. In Canada, we have dumping duties on steel. I don't know what the situation is in the US. They probably do, but whatever it is, it's not enough because the industry struggles and can't even raise the capital, apparently, to refresh itself. So the dour outlook for the storied steelmaker came after the Democratic presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, took the same position. So Biden says he wants to block it. Harris says she wants to block it. And earlier, Donald Trump said if he was elected, he would also block this deal from Nippon Steel. Hi, I am Lakeisha on Instagram. Thank you for joining us. As a reminder, I can't see your names on anything else but Instagram. But if you send me a note in the comments, I can definitely see it there and say hello to you. You can ask any questions. Tell me what's going on. So the union said the deal... where are we here? So everybody's putting a hold on this $14.1 billion deal, including the United Steelworkers, the union. They opposed this as well. And they say that Burritt's, the CEO's threats to close mills, is just an attempt to shift attention away from what is called his bad management of the company and an ill-conceived merger with Nippon Steel. The union said the deal would allow Nippon to gut U.S. Steel's operations to benefit its steel mills in Japan. So do you think someone would spend $14 billion, make commitments to spend another $3 billion to modernize the steel mill plants, agree not to lay anybody off for a couple of years, like nobody, union worker for a couple of years? Would you do that to move into a U.S. market for no other reason than to gut that U.S. market, to gut that business and bring all that production back to Japan so that you could ship into the U.S. like you're doing already? Because I think they're one of the top producers of steel in the world. So clearly they can export into the U.S. already, if that made sense. But they think they should spend these billions, upwards of $20 billion, to have domestic production. And the union saying, well, wait a minute, you're just going to waste that $20 billion, send production back to Japan or your other mills around the world, and then do what you're already doing. Like, his argument is just idiotic. His union guy goes on to say his reckless statements and mismanagement are the only true obstacles to U.S. Steel remaining a sustainable steel company. Nippon says it's interested in acquiring U.S. Steels to expand into the U.S. market, as I just said, a market where the Japanese companies had little presence. Agreed. Oh, they're the fourth largest steel producer by tonnage. And they've pledged to spend upwards of $3 billion to modernize this thing. So here's the deal. It's a political day here on Mornings with Scott. U.S. Steel is a significant employer and part of business in Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a swing state, very close election. If the Democrats need Pennsylvania, they basically need Pennsylvania to win. I don't know that Trump specifically needs Pennsylvania, but his life is a lot better if he wins Pennsylvania. So Biden wants to block the deal with Nippon. Harris wants to block the deal. Trump wants to block the deal. The union wants to block the deal. This is entirely, well, not the union, but on the political candidate side, this is entirely about the election in a critical swing state because there is zero electoral profit in going out to the population of Pennsylvania and the workers and saying, oh yeah, don't worry about it. We're going to let the Japanese buy your mill. That's not going to work. Even if it's the right decision, which it is, nobody's going to do that before an election. And the evidence is that everybody is against these deals, but there's no business reason to be against the deal. You know, they always talk about, sorry, got to get rid of that call. They always talk about foreign capital being part of the electoral platform. We need to make Canada a great place to invest. We need to make the US a great place to invest. We need a tax regime that accomplishes that. Well, here you've got foreign capital coming from Japan in a serious way, wanting to invest in this US deal, and that's what everybody wants. That's what everybody wants. They're going to play by the rules because they have to. Otherwise, they're going to waste their investment. They're going to follow regulations because they have to, or they're going to waste their investment. They're going to make a deal with the unions and keep union workers, and the company's going to thrive, and it's not thriving right now. It's a win-win-win all around, and it just makes better jobs with somebody else's money. Who cares who the owners are? At the end of the day, who cares where they are? You have all the power you want locally to protect workers, to protect the environment, to do whatever you want to engineer from a political perspective. We have the same in where I live in my residential area. We have a bunch of tech coal mines are sort of centered out of there. I think we have 5 coal mines around my place, and they sold to Glencore. Don't hold me to this, but I believe they're Swiss. Foreigners are coming in. Foreigners are coming in to buy our mines. But you know, that's supposed to be a good thing for the country. As long as the environment is protected, jobs are protected, the resources in the coal mine example, the resources are there. They're not in Switzerland. They're not somewhere else. Obviously, they're just going to operate the mines in accordance with Canadian law. Like, it's such a stupid thing to fight these sorts of deals. You stand up as a politician, you say every day we need competitive taxes, we need competitive regulation for foreign investment, and then someone wants to come in with foreign investment and y'all freak out and want to put a block to it. This has nothing to do with anything other than the election coming up in November. And another Scott prediction: after the election, this deal will be slightly improved and then will be permitted. That's what I think is going to happen, no matter who wins the election. I think that Biden could do it in his stump period. Harris could do it. Trump could do it, because it is the right thing to do from a business, investment, and jobs perspective. And look at, I don't give you investment advice. I don't give you financial advice, but I will say this. That if you look at a chart on U.S. steel, since this political interference in the possible transaction, the stock's gone down 22% since that looks like maybe mid-August. Yeah, around mid-August. It's down 22%, even with this little uptick today. That's entirely because of the political risk associated with this transaction. I think that political risk will go away after the election. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you that I was buying some options on this while I was trying to figure out how to log on this morning. Maybe I bought the right options. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I was half paying attention, but I don't know. Just think it's interesting, the intersection between politics and business. That's it for today. Hey, what are you doing today? I'm going to go shoot my course. I got a new recording system yesterday, was setting it up yesterday. It's fantastic. And the first module 1 of the First Step to Profit Academy, this module is teaching about key performance indicators, continuous improvement, how to fight through confirmation bias with different perspectives in your business. I think it's terrific, and I'm going to go shoot it today, finally, because it's to be released September 15th. So that's what I'm up to today. And is that it? That's all of my prepared remarks. Let's look for Francine. Thank you for joining on Instagram. Let's look through my comments. Anything I need to respond to? Nope. We'll see you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Mountains.